I also wanted to talk to the leaders that are always leading while bleeding.
Like I said, it struck me because, like you said, you come outside and the car is gone. As we prepared for the morning of the event, my husband made a quick trip to the car. He returned upstairs with a look I'll never forget. The car's gone.
So in that moment, I just felt like, you know what, I have an assignment, I have something that I need to do, and I did that. Once you put it out there, like I said, you don't take it back. Writing a book is not so much all the time about telling your story. It's about being at peace with your story. When we learn the lessons in the process, then I say, okay, then help someone else. We have to stop allowing people to determine and dictate what we do with our lives. I got to the point where I said, I don't care. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what you say about me, because if I was to go through your life and your story, it's dramatic. When you really start to love yourself, when you really start to value your voice, you really don't care. Because you have to understand that your assignment is so much bigger than the noise.
Well, we're not going for perfection here. We're going for best version of ourselves. Okay, Dr. Sherrie, this is the book. This was a blood, sweat, and tears. I want to talk to you about your chapter because I absolutely love how vulnerable everyone was, but you kind of getting in there and jumping in and really making an example with your story. So I love your chapter. Love this photo, of course. How to grade yourself and grow, breaking cycles that keep you stuck. So I, of course, have read this chapter 2 or 3 times and was really, really inspired. But I really want to dive in today into your story because you tell a very, very powerful story of how you were out in the world, and I'll let you tell it, speaking to women, encouraging them, being motivational, and your car. I'll let you tell it. So let's talk about that incident that you talk about in this chapter here.
Yeah, so I think it was finally time for me to tell this story, and what better book than to tell the story in. This story happened back in 2016. So I
Okay.
literally have been sitting on this story, and out of all of the stories that I've told about my life, I've never told this one because it was still a part of it that felt a little like embarrassing,
Yeah.
and I wanted to tell the story because one, I'm healed from it. I wanted to be vulnerable. But I also wanted to talk to the leaders that are always leading while bleeding, right? Leading while bleeding, because a lot of times our leaders are people that are in certain positions, and we keep these personas,
Yeah.
right? That because we
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
want anyone to know we're really suffering the way that we're
Right.
suffering, right?
Right.
So when I talk about the story, and I don't know about how much I want to give them, I'm going to give them some pieces, but we want them to go and buy the book.
Exactly.
But I tell the story about speaking at a major event. And this, what was so significant about this event, is that my grandmother had passed 2 weeks before this event. And while I was planning the event, I was really just struggling to see whether or not I was going to continue. And I talk about this in another book that I wrote, whether or not I was going to continue on that purpose journey, or whether
Mm,
I was going to go back to what was familiar. And I, of course, when your grandparent dies, right? You want to be there for the family, but just in my spirit, I knew I had to keep going. So I wanted to
right.
give that back piece of the story to say, why would you even be in this position, right?
Right.
So
Right. Right.
so
Right.
after I
Right. You're
told
just not crazy on, on doing have a crazy drug habit or something like that. It really was like, okay, I'm helping everyone and kind of neglecting myself too at that point. So, like I said, it struck me because, like you said, you come outside and the car is gone. Okay.
the car's gone.
And you just like, let's keep going. Let's keep moving. But I know that I've had a car repossessed. Okay. I've had, let's be clear. I filed bankruptcy and literally a tow truck came and got the car out of the driveway. I was prepared. I knew they were coming. That was not shocking for me. Okay. Because I knew, but I couldn't imagine the car I drove somewhere to just say, I'm just going to let that go. I don't care how am I, and figure out a way home. What were you feeling in that moment? How were you like you said you kind of were on autopilot, but uh, did you cry? Did you like come on, talk to me? What
So
happened? What
yeah,
was the emotion there?
so we drive from Houston to Dallas to present at this major event. I'm doing radio interviews. I have magazines that are there. So it's like a really, major event. And
Yeah.
it's my event. I'm hosting the event. So that morning, because we drove in that Friday night, so that Saturday morning, as we were getting ready to just get some last few minute things that we need to get it out the car, my husband goes downstairs while I'm in full getting makeup done, hair, like I have a whole glam squad, right? He
Right,
comes
right.
back and he says, "The car is gone." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "The car is gone." Now,
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
say that we knew we need obviously, when you were going through a repossession, you understand you need to pay your bill. So I knew that it
It
was
was
going to
past due.
eventually catch up, but I didn't
Yeah,
think it was
yeah.
gonna catch up in another city. I was planning to take care of it when I got back.
Right, right, because you're gonna get some clients and probably get some business, and there's this optimism. And so you wrote that. So I'm gonna read this line to you. You said, "As we prepared for the morning of the event, my husband made a quick trip to the car. He returned upstairs with a look I'll never forget. The car's gone."
The car is gone. So you
And
said, what
so
was
your
I feeling
husband,
in
is
that
he
moment?
kind of just like right like you and just, okay, let's keep it moving? Like I said, me and my husband are kind of very different people. And so if I'm calm, he's freaking out.
Well, somewhat we were in the moment. I don't know if you
Mm,
realize this was literally an hour before the event is about to start. There are
right.
vendors that are setting up tables, there are people that are flying in. If I was to
Yeah.
tell you some of the names that were on this roster, right,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did not have a moment to just soak. I mean, it
right.
literally it was go time. So,
Yeah,
did we talk about it later? Yes. But in that moment, my mind was, let's get through this. And I think, and I talk a lot about the struggle story. This wasn't my first time being in an uncomfortable situation, obviously,
okay.
right? This wasn't my first time dealing with life. Life
Right.
had been lifing for about
Yeah,
2 years. And this is
okay.
why my family we lived in a hotel, we got the children out of that, we put them into a home. And this was a full blown life cycle that I was in. So when this happened, it was like, okay, let's just get through it. So honestly, my mind was not on myself in that moment. My mind was, there were people that had paid their money. There were people
Yeah,
that had invested into coming to hear me speak.
right,
There were people that were invested in my dream, right? So
right.
I couldn't let them down in that moment. So I knew I needed to get through it. There was nothing that happened, and it's kind of weird. Sometimes when you go through traumatic situations, I don't remember having any outbursts. I don't remember breaking down. I remember saying, "Let's get through this." And that's kind
Yeah,
of just my personality. We'll
yeah,
deal with what we need to deal with. So as the event started, I got finished with the team. No one knew what was going on. Not only are we out of town, we're out of town with three of my children because we travel with our kids, right? So
right.
there's a gang, three little babies,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, in the
and
rotel running around and whatever.
Exactly, right? But I said in that moment, okay, if this is what I'm really called to do, then I need the strength in order to be able to do it. I'm a woman of faith. I just pray about things and I move on. So the event went on. We never said anything to anyone. We paid vendors, we paid staff, we paid the hotel. Like, we were moving everything after the event. And once everyone was safe where they needed to be, then we went back to have that conversation. Okay, what are we gonna do now? Because we need to get back home. So,
Right,
I mean, like I talk about a lot, like, things happen, but how do you, in that moment, how do you deal with it? And I believe that a lot of times we continue certain life cycles because of the way that we react and we respond to things. So in that moment, I just felt like, you know what, I have an
ah,
assignment, I have something that I need to do, and I did that. So I shared that story in making it, because it was real stories of struggle, right? There was real stories, and I wanted to be able
right.
to really tell a
Right,
real
exactly. No
story.
made up stories. Right. I love that. And so one of the things like we talked about accomplishing in this book was talking about the real. Okay. We wanted to be, there's the big saying, fake it to make it. And we wanted to be, okay, this is what making it looks like. You know what I mean? And inside of that though, there is some faking it. So let's kind of talk about that for a second, because you wrote in here, you said you kind of learned from that. But you didn't, but you have a line here that I really pointed out. You said the truth was I didn't just adapt to dysfunction. I willfully participated in it, okay? So, you're starting to realize this pattern of if things are not working out, but I just keep going. And I'm never really actually kind of addressing that part of it. I'm just still going forward and I'm making it. I'm putting on a good front as you should, but at the same time there's something in the background that we kind of got to address. Just like a car, there's some sound, there's a car, this is a noise, this car is making a noise. We got what is that? And so you realize that that was kind of what you were doing, but you also said, I was willfully participating in it. Talk about that.
Yeah, I believe we all have choices. We have, and I even say from my community, right? A lot of times we are accepting to trauma and toxic
Mm,
situations because we think that's life. Now, I'm not saying that life doesn't happen and there are certain things that we go through, but if you start to see certain patterns to repeat in your life, you need to see who the common factor is, and it's
right.
you.
Right.
Right? So when
Yeah.
I said I willfully participated, there were years that I dealt with financial issues. It should not have gotten to that point. That repossession should have never happened because
Right.
there were things that happened prior to that when, like I said, we lost things before that. So I like to ask people, and that was the question I asked myself. How many times are you going to keep telling this story?
Mm,
How many years are you going to go
mm.
through this cycle? How much longer are you going to be okay with your life being on the level that it is right now? Now,
So
like
how
I
long
said,
after this event will you say you kind of started to take stock and realized this is me? Because
so
sometimes
I'm not
that's usually not, and I'm just even for myself, that's not usually my first go-to. I am, and I had to really work through this. I am such a blamer. That was like my thing. I had to really own that I your fault. And if this person would have did this, and if this person would have did this, and if this would have happened, because I'm perfect over here, that I had to wait, sis. It's just you. So how long after this event that you go outside, you drive home, you brush it off, we brush our shoulders off. How long after this thing happened before you really started to take stock and realize, you know what? Like you said, I'm willfully participating in this. This is not I'm the dysfunction essentially.
yeah, so it was not immediate. I
You don't say.
I wasn't as wise then as I am now.
Right.
It took a few years.
Yeah.
It took a few years of me just really getting fed up with my situation. It also coaching helped me to see those patterns as well. Because as I started coaching with other people, I started seeing their patterns.
Yeah.
So then it made me almost do a internal look in a mirror at myself and say, wait a minute,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're seeing patterns that everyone else is dealing with, but are you looking at your patterns?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
so it took some time, it took some more loss because I'm a very stubborn person. It takes some time to really kind of get to me. But once I get something, I get it. Like once I lock in, I lock in. So I anyone that's watching this, right? I always talk, and that's when I talk about grade yourself in this book.
Right.
You have to take some time to really sit with yourself and be real. You have
Mm,
to take some time to really start to write out your story. And this is not to promote anyone writing their book, but that is what I do, right? And the reason I
right.
love when people write their book because it makes them be honest and truthful with their story.
Very
Because
true.
you can
Very true.
keep
And you start to
blaming.
pick out things like that in your story too. Like, wait, oh my gosh. And then, like you said, I don't even want to tell this story because you realize you have two or three stories like that. Then you're like, okay.
Exactly. And then you have to say, you have to look at the pattern. So I think that's all about when we talk about growing. Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, we give the best advice to others. The
Right.
question is, are we taking our own advice? So if you saw a friend that kept having the same patterns and kept dating the same kind of man and kept
Yeah.
getting in the same type of situation, you'll tell them it's you, right? But
Right, right.
somehow when
So let's talk about that point for a second because you're coaching. And I noticed for myself when I was coaching, I would then attract people like myself. So they would then have these same issues. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And what I was picking up on a lot of my clients was that fear. And I had to really get that out of myself because I had kind of overcome the fear for myself, but the fear for them, you know what I mean? When they would give me fear, I would kind of coddle it like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't flip a house. So now I'm the only one with houses because I'm coddling to their fear. And I realized I had to really get that out of me and kind of be like, look, you're not gonna die. And say that to people. If this doesn't work out, you're still gonna be alive and you're gonna live another day and kind of get over all of this fear. So as you're coaching people, for example, are you coaching on them writing books or are you still kind of just doing motivational speaking? Kind of tell me what kind of students you were coaching first.
So it was a combination, but books is where I really started to be able to sit and work with people. Even from a coaching perspective when you deal with business, it was books that really helped me to really have one-on-one deep dive conversations, because I always start off with, tell me your story.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can hear, based on the things that they say in their story, whether or not they're still blaming others, whether or not they haven't forgiven, whether or not they're angry with their life, because the words that you speak show where you are.
Right.
You can't hide from it, right? The
Right.
tone in which they use, the body language. So I was
Right.
able to then help them to see their patterns. So it's very interesting, because when I first started helping people write their books and coaching, I didn't have a structure or a game plan, right? Sometimes you start things from a passion project, things that you
Right,
you
right,
really
right.
love doing.
Yeah.
But then after I started to become more well versed in it, I started to create systems, and in those systems, I started to ask certain questions, and I realized that the same questions applied to every person that I was interviewing and working with on their books, and taking them through that journey. So when you start to really sit with your life journey, when you
Mm.
start to, and I take people on this purpose story, is what I say. We talk about where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go. But I also put together, how long have you been where you are right now?
Ooh.
How long have
Ow.
you been in this situation? Because now that lets me know whether or not you're actively engaged in the process of growing, or if you're still stuck in that trauma cycle. Now, I'm not a
Right.
psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but life again shows us patterns. And
It does.
as humans, we're not really different. I
Right. Right.
mean, so
Yeah.
when you tell me your story that you've been in a dead end job for 10 to 15 years, I understand you don't value yourself,
Mm.
because
Right.
it doesn't take that long to change.
To figure right, to change. It doesn't. And if you're not changing, you're choosing. That's one of the thing that's the saying from my therapist. If you're not changing, you're choosing. So to that point, so when we're talking about, okay, so you're coaching people, you're picking up on their stories. And at the same time, in this chapter, you're talking about, you started to realize that you would go into the stage and you're speaking about my struggle. And so the people that you're now asking them their stories, they're speaking to you about their struggle. What does that then kind of do? Do you realize that speaking about the struggle all the time, you felt like it started to define you? Or do you feel like it was, when did you realize like that was the kind of part of the problem? I guess you kind of point to that a little bit. I guess I'll let you explain it a little bit deeper, but you kind of started to not say that that was the problem per se of you speaking about your struggles, but it was too much of your story or too much of your identity. I don't know. I'll let you kind of expand on that.
So what's very interesting is that I began to attract powerful women that had never told their story.
Okay.
So, and that's what I loved about book writing. The women that were attracted to me were the women that looked perfect on the outside. They
Mm.
had the red bottoms, their hair
Yeah.
was always together, their
Right.
face was beat,
Right.
but they were broken.
Yeah.
So I attracted me. I looked
Yeah.
great on the outside. I honestly didn't tell a whole lot of my struggle story
Right.
until I started working with other professionals, realizing that at the time, now this is, 7, 8, 10 years ago,
Right. Right.
at
Right.
the time, there weren't a lot of people telling their story. So
Right.
I started to tell my story from a place of, let me help you understand that no matter how beautiful you look on the outside, no matter how well you clean up, you have a story. If you don't do anything to change those cycles, you'll repeat the story.
That's right.
And then your children would then start to gravitate and pull on those traumatic situations that you've encountered. So mine came
Right.
from more of a legacy standpoint of, let's do something better, let's
Okay.
grow, and let's
Right.
stop pretending like,
Mm.
that day when I cleaned
Right.
myself up and went on and said, "Hey, everybody, welcome," right? I went, let's
Yeah.
stop pretending that everything is okay, so that you can actually really live the life you want, not the one you keep
Right.
pretending to have.
Yeah. And do you feel like you connect with people more? So one of the things, it's funny, when I came to you, I really didn't feel like I didn't have a problem getting vulnerable. I did need to go into more details because I was used to telling my story in a short way because I got this amount of, I got, like they said, people have 2, 3 seconds. So I got to kind of get this story really condensed, and just expanding on it was more of like, okay, remember all of the details. And I was just so used to telling the same quick story. Used to live in my parents' basement, bring broker up, da 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 da, did some deals. Now I'm here. Boom. And you're like, no, it's not a whole book. Let's tell the whole story. And so I don't think that necessarily I had a problem being vulnerable because that's how I got real estate deals. but actually telling more of it and getting more raw really was almost therapeutic. Do you find that it's therapeutic for the people that you're helping coach to tell your stories, or do you feel like sometimes it's maybe too traumatic? Because there's been times when I tell people, I want you to use your real story to connect in your business. And then sometimes that just is almost like now they need to go see a life coach. Because they have a lot in there that I couldn't see. Like you said, they have this perfect exterior, and I didn't even know all of that was in there going on until I start pushing on some levers.
Hmm. So you were different because you had already told your story. Like most of the women that I work with are professionals that are generally still in corporate America, or
Mm,
they're, new entrepreneurs.
right.
So in corporate, previously, and I don't know how it is now because it adapts, you didn't talk about your story.
That's true.
You went to work every day and you
No,
did your job.
especially not as a woman, and especially not as a woman of color. As and again, not saying that, the white male doesn't have to do that, but we just really felt really guarded. It was almost like we were in a new space. I've been in corporate America, and I could totally tell you, no one knew anything about me really, at my job. They would be sometimes shocked I had kids,
Hmm.
because
It's
that's how
true.
I was taught. Like, go to work as this.
Mhm.
And that's it. And so you're right, you do kind of get really, really trained not to tell your story. So I could see as a corporate woman, like you said, very accomplished, is really having a hard time pulling down those barriers and pulling the curtain down to really tell her true story. So kind of talk through that, because that is how you said, in your book, how you kind of started to move that into your coaching, like some of your story and some of those breakthroughs that you would kind of break down. But
Yeah.
I guess my full question, or the full conversation that I'm saying is, you're getting them to be vulnerable. Have you had situations where it was almost too much for them? Because I think that's where I started, like where it was just too much for them, or it just didn't come
Um,
together because they were so emotional, you know?
so
Anything
I
like that?
haven't had people do they haven't been really emotional in front of me. They may process this differently. We have had conversations where they say, "You know what? I need a moment. Let's
Yeah,
pick this back up." And
yeah,
I not no problem, because I'm not here to push you, right? I'm just here to
right,
help you become comfortable with telling the story in the parts of the story you need to tell. Like that's another
right,
thing I tell, especially women. You may not need to tell the entire story right now. Like the story that I told in Making It, that happened back in 2016. I'm
right,
telling this for the first time in 2025. Right?
right.
So that
Because
you
you're
have
ready.
to understand your process. You have to understand what you're comfortable with. You have to understand what doors you're willing to open up, because once you tell the story, you can't take it back.
Right, right, and it's important too not to make up stories either, or,
Oh, absolutely.
or leave out important parts. If it's too I'll tell people if it's too uncomfortable for you. So a lot of times, like if I'm coaching a real estate student, I say, I often try to go after why I was so great with foreclosures, because I had been through foreclosure. So it was like a easy connection to be able to talk to a seller. Hey, you don't want that to happen. Let's get this with an investor, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes people will be for a divorce, for example. I say, oh, divorce is a great niche. It's two people was paying the house, now it's one. And their divorce was so painful. It's like they can't use that
Mhm.
story to connect.
Yep.
How do you get them to kind of get that away? And like you said, you grade because your chapter is about grading yourself. So in other words, I'm gonna grade myself. I'm gonna take stock of me, and I'm gonna grow.
Mhm.
How do you pull that
Absolutely.
out of people? Because some of we're really guarded, and sometimes some of the traumas that we bring up kind of break us down a little bit too much to even get to the point.
Absolutely. So some of the stories are not to be told to everyone. Now, if you
Mm,
have so when people work with me and I can feel the sensitivity of the story, or I can see their body language starting to shift a bit when we talk about certain things, I tell them, let's put a pause in this. We're not ready to tell that part of the story yet. Now,
okay.
you can go to your therapist, whatever your process is, your
Yeah,
prayer, your whatever your process is. My
yeah,
thing is not to get people to be in a position where they're uncomfortable talking
right,
about their story. And
right,
another thing that and when you talk about divorce, I have quite a few women that have written their books with me that have gone through divorces, and a
right.
lot of them were nasty divorces. My
Yeah,
thing is, I said, talk to up until the point where it got really, really nasty and ugly. We can talk up
yeah,
until that point if you
okay,
decide to, because
yeah,
there's still phases, right? And there's so I know I'm almost like talking about this book writing process, but there are phases to it. So you
Okay.
may be able to tell that story. You let and we're dealing say divorce. I know I'm married, you're married, so we don't have a divorce story, but
Right.
those that do. So let's say you met him at 20, you got a divorce at 35. Well, it wasn't terrible all 15 years, right? So do
Right.
you want to talk about some of those moments that you created maybe beautiful children from the story that
Yeah.
there were times that times were good. Let's not deal with the or leave them out altogether because that's not there's so much more to your life than just your relationship.
Right, right. I
That- that-
love
that-
that, and that's why you are so amazing at helping people write books. You've been helping amazing at me, with me. Speaking of that, because there's 2 things that you kinda triggered in my mind. The first one was divorce. So I'm literally my husband's 2nd wife. He hates when I tell people that. Oh, he hates
Mm.
that. And I'm like, "But I that's a part of my story." And he was just like, "Why are you telling people that I'm divorced?" I was like, "Well, really, I don't want people to think that I'm in judgment of divorce. I wouldn't have gotten my husband had it not been for divorce." So I see it as a positive thing, like, that you don't have to be married to someone, everything doesn't work out, and we have this great relationship. I have great bonus daughters. His ex-wife is remarried, and, we just it's all awesome. I actually think we're probably an example, a great example, Um, so I can get that because I can see him not going there. And that's still a part of my story. So I don't care that he doesn't want me to tell it. That's who I am. I am someone's 2nd wife, and I don't care. I'm saying that. But another thing was for me was with Gavin. This was the first time I mentioned his name. I kind of really got into it. I really would touch upon it because it was such a sensitive part for me to discuss my autistic child. I
Mhm.
also didn't want me, I have all of these questions in my mind, like, what if he doesn't want this? Because I'm really big as a mom. I don't think put, some people, again, you have to each his own. Some people put their kids on social media, put pictures of their kids. I really try not to do that because I feel like that should be their decision once they're 18. If they want to be on social media with me, like my daughter, she's 19 now, she'll show up on me and show up at events. But the 13, she's 16 now, the 13, she's 16, and the twins, I kind of leave them out of it because I don't feel like they're old enough to make a decision. But it was such a powerful thing that I needed to share about my autistic son because again, he's 8 years old. I've never really mentioned him in a way, and it was a big struggle for me learning him and adapting to the unpredictability of an autistic child. And you really had to pull that out of me.
And
And
you
it took
did it
time.
so seamlessly though. I know we talked about it in one of your previous books, but we didn't hit we kind of just I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I
okay,
wasn't
I didn't
ready.
know that.
I wasn't ready. I
You
wasn't
wasn't
ready. If
ready.
I'm being honest, I wasn't ready.
Yep. And when you're ready, and like you said, I'm not gonna force it until you're ready because it's
Right.
your story, right? It's what
Right.
you once you put it out there, like I said, you don't take it back, right? So I
Right.
tell people, make sure you're ready. This is
Yeah.
right in writing a book, and I don't know how we get it on writing a book, but
Yeah.
I guess because this is what I do, right?
Right, you
Uh,
write books
right,
and write
right,
great
right,
books.
right.
Bestsellers.
You're right. Right. Writing a book is not so much all the time about telling your story. It's about being at peace with your story.
Mm,
And so when you talk about it, when you write it, when you journal about it, that's you literally coming to peace with your transformation, your healing, your journey. We all have parts of our story we wish that maybe that wasn't our story.
right,
But now that we're going through it, when we learn from it, when we learn why, when we learn the lessons in the process, then I say, okay, then help someone else because we sometimes we could be so selfish because we think it's just about us.
right,
Me telling my story of my car being repossessed, me telling my story of the things that my family and I went through, it's not necessarily so it can make me feel like a hero in any way that I've survived it. It's
right.
just so someone else can say, wait a minute, if she can do that with the little that she had, what's
Yeah,
my excuse? If
yeah.
she can connect with who she is and still understanding, because when we go through things, that's baggage. A lot of us are
Right.
carrying very heavy baggage. And it
Very
takes a
true.
lot to be able to work through that. And that's even what I said from the beginning. There's so many leaders that are leading while they're bleeding. And
Right.
it's not okay.
Yeah.
We've been conditioned to just like toughen up, get through it. No, it's not okay. So let's talk about it. And I love this era that we're in right now where people are more vulnerable. But when I was growing up, we didn't talk about pain.
I do. I love it too. They say that everybody's so soft and everybody's in therapy and all of these feelings, but I'm like, I think it is beneficial. It is very therapeutic. You mentioned writing down your story and journaling about it, and then being able to write a book, it really is so therapeutic. Um, Writing out your story, telling your story, people connecting to it, even if they have judgments about it, because of course the judgments will come, it still feels really good, even with the negativity that you may get from sharing certain parts of your story.
And I want to, can
It-
I insert something there?
yeah.
People judge based on their internal mirror.
Mm,
And we have to stop allowing people to determine and dictate what we do with our lives. And that was
yeah.
one of the most, I would say, profound moments that was in my life when I got to the point where I said, I don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care what you think about me.
Right.
I don't care what
Yeah.
you say about me.
Yeah.
Because if I was to go through your life and your story, it's dramatic. So of course,
Exactly.
when you're a mean person and mean seated person, there are things that are going on inside of you. So you and I wouldn't even, we all wouldn't even be in the same circle. So I just wanted to say that people talk
I
about
do. I
what will
love
they
that
say.
too. You're right. It really is. And I had to learn that too. Like you said, people project their things onto you, their judgments onto you, and you really just got to kind of be like a duck with the water. Just got to roll right off of you. It is so true. But a lot of people can't take negative feedback. They can't take the comment section. They can't take the thumbs down. I'm
Yeah.
constantly telling people tell their stories. Like I was so proud. I am just so proud of this book that there is 10 of us here telling our story, because there's been so many people, so many great stories of struggle and overcome, struggle, and and they achieved, that I don't think enough of us realize how many times we've had a struggle and we've overcome it, and how that can be inspiring to someone else. However, people can't, the negative feedback that people get, it's so hard for people. But I always want to tell them that, like you said, don't worry about it, but at the same time, it's gonna come. You can't hide from it, you can't run from it, and that's not a reason not to do it. You know what I mean? People put a post up, take the post down, start the this, take it down, and I'm just like, you gotta, it's gonna be messy, it's gonna be a mess. Like, literally, if you look back at my old YouTube videos, they're shot with an old laptop. I didn't have a camera, I used my Zoom, so the camera's awful, and I leave those videos up there so that people can see the
Yeah,
growth.
progress.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we that sometimes we're our biggest critic. When you really start to love yourself, when you really start to value your voice, you really don't care. Because you
Yeah.
have to understand that your assignment is so much bigger than the noise. And when
Mm,
I started to understand that there are billions of people, right? There are millions of people, so what the 5 that don't like you or the 10 that don't like you? That
right.
was one of the scriptures that always stuck with me, that there are more for you than against you. And I
Right.
always say that to myself when things get crazy or when people start making their comments. I'm like, there's always more for me than against me. So I
Yeah.
go back and look at the testimonies. I go back and look at the things that people have said. I still keep those notes when people, okay, all right, we'll pause. And she's probably gonna keep calling back because that's my mama, and I'm trying to put it on do not disturb. I don't know how it can come through.
Certain people, if
Okay.
you have them starred, they can push through to do not disturb,
Remind me.
especially if they call more than once. If you need to take it, don't hesitate. I know your mom. If you really need to take, go ahead. We're recording. We can edit this out. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I know your mom's situation, so I'm almost like,
Let me
I'm
just
almost,
tell
you're
her
making
I'm
me
on
nervous now.
a
You
video.
know, I'll start sweating through the
Listen,
dress.
and she is that mom. She is that mom that
Right.
will
My
call
mom
back
too,
10
whether it's something or
times.
not. So then you never know.
Right. Like, did you just see that message I sent you today? I'm like,
Right.
it wasn't important. Like, did you hear what your brother said? Not important. Okay. So, anyways, what was I saying? So I just sent her a message. So hopefully
The
she doesn't
negative
do that
comments,
again.
being
So
positive, yeah, knowing that
I
the
totally lost
negativity is
my
gonna
train of
come,
thought.
knowing that they're gonna say, even no matter what you do, you're gonna have to deal with the negativity, especially when you're small. People just immediately, when you first get started, especially, say, for example, just using social media. You start off, you have a video, it only has 17 views. So now you're really the easy target, you know what I mean? Because, oh, you ain't nothing anyway. And then you're kind of feeling like that too. So um that's in your inner voice, and they're saying that same thing. But another thing too that I'm picked up on, kind of just to move to the next point. I had another part that I was going to read to you, and we could kind of go on. So we kind of talked through that. So I did have that underlined where you, because you said that again. I love that you said purpose clues. And maybe that I can even just put a little quick excerpt in the book when you're talking about that. I'll bring that up. But let's get to the okay. So let's get to the part where you were talking about your report card and grading yourself, and then the little trademark part. I love that. So we're talking about grading yourself. So moving again from you're now breaking through and you're improving yourself, and you realize, okay, now that I've kind of been able to overcome this, I have something to give. I have been able to really overcome this. I've been able to really work on myself, say these positive affirmations, pray on it, and I've really broke through some of these things. Now it's time for me to teach other people how to do that. So you have your grade yourself system essentially. Talk talk speak to me on that part. Like go in a little bit of detail about the grading yourself.
Yeah, so I came up with the grade yourself system one day when I was talking to my children. And as I was helping them through some of their math work, I was like, we've gone through this subject before. Why don't you remember what we
Right.
discussed?
Knowing
So I
them.
was being mom, because I'm a stickler for high achievement, the overachiever. And I started to just reflect on what if, as adults, we would take the time to actually grade
Mm,
ourselves with a progress report? Would we be okay with the results? Would we be okay with the grade that we
right.
achieved, right? Because if there is no tracking system, there is no grading system, there's no level for you to actually to measure your life by. How do you know whether or not you're actually achieving? How do you know whether or not you are healing? How do you know whether or not you're not going through those same cycles and patterns? So I came up with this as a leadership training that started to pitch to organizations and things like that. Because also from a leadership perspective, we are very quick to tell other people what they're not doing in performance. But what happens when
Right,
someone
right,
actually
right.
grades us as a leader? What happens when they give us that feedback? So the grade yourself system were questions that I started to ask not only myself, but questions that I would ask through to my clients
So
while
take
I
me
was
through that.
coaching
Let's
them
do that.
or
Let's
going
let's
through
kind of
some of
role
their
play a little
sessions
bit. Like
with
you're
them.
working with a leader. What are some of the things that you're kind of seeing? Because again, I also in two parts. Obviously, we're grading ourselves. Ours just an overall grade our life, or are we saying let's grade my finances? Let's grade my relationship with my spouse. Let's grade my relationship with my kids. Or is it just kind of an overall grade? So break that down and let's kind of maybe role play a little bit.
Exactly. So depending on the area, so the area in your life where you feel the most issues, traumas, situations. So there is an overall grading system, but then we like to pivot to those particular areas that you're dealing with. So just like subjects in school, right? You may have already passed math, but now you need
Nice.
to go take English
Right.
or physics or biology, right? So let's deal with some of those subjects that are not your favorite subjects. Like, so if I asked you about your
Right.
parenthood, you're like, yeah, I'm a great parent. When I talk to you about your relationship, you're like, I know I have some issues with communication. I have not, I haven't matured in an area
Right.
where I don't lash out. There's certain things we all have
Right.
areas that we can get a better grade in. So with the system, depending on where you need to be graded at, there are a
I
list
love
of assessment questions that then give you based on the grade that you receive, those are the areas that we actually
self-aware, because
target.
you
So
talked about that. The
sometimes you may
previous
need
chapter is from survival to self-awareness, essentially. So instead of just surviving it, making it, I need to really take, stock of myself and be self-aware. I don't find that most people are self-aware. Is this just Noelle's opinion? So I'm not sure how well they would grade themselves. I guess let's keep
yeah.
talking through that.
Yeah, so the good thing about so this is a self-assessment, but then and there's only
Right,
so
right,
much
right.
I was able to put in the book
Yeah.
itself, but there's a full system. Then you have others
Mm,
grade you as well, right? Because obviously you are going to think that you're going to get a
okay.
much higher
I love
grade,
that. I love that. Just to get some
especially on a multiple
objectivity.
choice
I mean,
test.
some obviously it's still subjective because it's about, you, the person, but at least some objectivity instead of you grading you all the time. Okay, so I love this. Okay, so in the system, you do kind of assess when and ask others how they perceive you in this specific area. Okay. Love that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what's very interesting though? People
Yeah.
are always telling you about yourself. And if we're really honest, when you say people are not as self-aware, I think people are not as self-aware because they
Mm,
choose not to be. When I sit and I look at myself, there are certain things that my clients started to say over and over and over again. And I'm like, do I want to be known for that? Like they're like, listen, she doesn't mess around. She's the toughest in town. Like, okay, I don't always want to be that girl, right? That tells it
Right,
like it
right,
is,
right.
no matter what I call you out, right? Because
Right,
I
right, right.
still want some
All right, we all
femininity
have the
to me, right?
masculine
So,
energy,
so
we
I
do.
started to take that and
Um,
say, right. So I started to take that assessment and say, okay, let me pull back and maybe try a different type of approach when it comes to some of the coaching. Now, yeah, there's certain areas where I need to be very forceful. This is what it is, but there's certain areas I have to
yeah,
understand and give you some
right, you
leniency.
agree.
So I started to take. So what I'm saying is, we're always getting feedback. If I ask my husband, he has a whole list of things he would say about me, and I'm
Moi?
like, me, you know. My
Good
children
point.
give me assessments about me.
They really
Your
are.
children are the most honest. So the thing is, we have people that are saying things about
Yeah.
us. The question is, do we listen? So this self-assessment is also an assessment for those that are involved in your life, that are really willing to tell you the truth. Because ultimately, this is not a blame. This is not like, well, if they didn't do this, I didn't do that. The ultimate question
Mm,
is, do you want to become a better person?
yeah,
Do you want to grow?
right.
Do you want to be the best version of yourself? I should not be, from year
Shouldn't
to
be the same.
year, from
It
month
should
to month, there should be
yes.
changes, and it should be
Yeah,
notable.
yeah,
It should be noticeable. There should be things
yeah,
about your life that people say,
yeah.
oh, you're
That is,
different.
you've grown.
That is a
Yes.
compliment, because it
Yeah.
means you're
So
growing and
true. I
evolving.
love that. I mean, that was very powerful because you're so right. And it was funny because it really did click in my mind. When my son, I think I put that in my older son, told me that he could see the growth. And it did. It took time for them to be able to see it. But at the same time, like you said, growth should be you should be able to see someone's growth. You should be able to speak to them and tell that they've grown and that they're different and they're not just the same person year after year. And part of that is these things that we're talking about, being able to be self-aware and take stock of yourself and realize sometimes maybe you don't have some of the best habits. Maybe you aren't you and again, we're all flawed people. We're not going for perfection here. We're going for best version of ourselves. So you had another really powerful line in here that I wanted before we wrapped up that I really want to get into because again, I think this opportunity is going to be amazing for others to be able to write their stories as well. Obviously, we have been posting it. It's going to be on the screen. It's in the description box how you can be a part of our next series. This book is going to be a series and we're going to just keep going with making it. And this is just the first iteration of it. And these are 10 powerful stories. And in our next book, I know there'll be, 10, 12 more powerful stories that really take people to the next level. But you had a dual role in this book. One, you're an author in it. But two, you are the publisher. You are the one that helped pull our stories out. You're the one that helped us write them. We're taking audio to transcriptions and all of those other things. So as you worked through that and you were going through all of these different stories, I could see something in here that you probably should have coached everyone to say. You says, as I coach others who help, as a coach who helps others find purpose and write their books, I guide people in connecting the dots to their stories. Life has a way of revealing patterns, their clues, their purpose clues, discovery point. And we got to take that journey together. So that was kind of one of the amazing things that you were able to do was take our stories, but not convolute them, not water your story down. But talk about that experience of working through some of these others. I really want to talk through that because you had a big role being an author in it and being a publisher of it and pulling all of our stories out. What are some of the lessons you learned that you want to kind of talk about? Because I'm sure you have some secrets to share.
Well, I honestly enjoy being a part of this project so much. And what I love about anthologies is it allows you to get a taste of people. It can go so much
Yeah,
deeper, but we want to give you a taste. And as I was talking through them about what do you want to be remembered by in this book? What are the key takeaways? And that's something that I always, and this is
right.
we're always giving out pointers and tips. I always tell people to have a purpose. What is it that you want the reader to walk away with once they have put your chapter down, once they've put your book down? So as I went through that process with them, I interview people. I pick up their personalities. I hear the things that they say, right? But I also ask them, like, not only what is your story, what is it that
Mm,
people are always asking you about? What is it that you're passionate about? So I ask them those type of questions so that we can then formulate and I can ask the right
Love that.
questions to know
I love that, and I can
what
see
it
that
is
in
that
here
they
that
want to write
everyone,
about or what they
yeah,
should
like
write
from
about.
just Jennifer McPhail and Justin Mersch, I can really see that these were things that they were passionate about and wanted to people to know and share. Like, my religion and my faith in God was really important. Me being an advocate for disabilities and, just some of the different stories, you really could see what they were passionate about. That was really powerful.
Yeah.
Did you find that it was like challenging or you maybe wanted to change your story? It's funny, I work with a lot of musicians, and then sometimes they'll hear somebody else's verse, and then they wanna change their verse. So, I'm wondering, did any of that happen with this? Did you wanna change your chapter after reading somebody else's? How did you keep the hat in the roles and not just kinda make it Dr. Sherry's book? 'Cause I know I would've just went all off the
So
rails. I would've read somebody else's,
this
and I would've kept changing my verse.
but you have
Okay.
to realize this is what I do,
Right, this is
Noelle. This is
not what
what I do
Noelle
day
does.
in and day out. So no, I'm never moved. I'm
Good.
never moved by anyone else's story. I always
Love
believe in
that.
being authentic to my voice. My story is not your story. The way that I tell my story is different from your story. Now, I will say one of the things that I have learned to do is to make sure that everyone's chapter or their book
Right.
sounds like
Yeah,
them, right? Like they actually wrote the
right,
story. Even times I may ghostwrite or, or I do the
right.
transcribe it. I want it to sound like you. It should never sound like, oh, yeah,
Right,
so
right, right.
Sherrie was a part of this entire book. She's in every chapter. It shouldn't feel like that. So what I loved about this particular group is it was such a great mix
Yeah,
of those that have
making
made
it.
it
Yep,
and those that are still
yep,
making it. And I love that. I wanted
yeah,
even those that are still making it, right? They still had parts that they wanted to talk about all the problems. And I'm like, even where you are right now, you
right,
are a solution to someone. You may
right,
not be where you want to be, but you have accomplished something in your
right,
life. So let's talk about that. So I like that there was no
right,
story that
yeah,
overpowered anyone else's story. Everyone's voice was unique, and I wanted to make sure that we stayed true to that. I wanted everyone to tell parts of their story. Now, what I found very interesting is when we first started the project, there was some that gave
mm,
very academic
that's
like
not it.
chapters, and
This
I'm
was
like, nope,
soul. There
that's
was
not
the
what this is about. This
soul.
is about making
Yeah,
it. This is
yeah,
real
I
stories.
could tell that. I saw some of the first drafts and was like,
This
"Oh,
is
we're
real
gonna be here a
stories.
while."
Because a lot of times, especially when you are a
It's
professional, you're
true.
not used to talking about your story or what you don't.
Yeah.
And I want to just say, tell your story. A lot of times, people don't know how to tie their
Mm.
story to a solution, and that's what's different. And when we write together and making it, we are bringing
Right,
solutions. We're
right,
not
and
just telling
obviously you
stories.
overcame it because 'cause you're not still in it, and that's another time, even if you're still struggling with something else, like, say you're in a financial struggle, let's just use that as an example. You've moved and you're telling the story about the repossession. You've obviously moved past that at some point, even if you still have not figured all of your finances out. Maybe you've gotten another car and you did solve for that, so there's some solutions about how you were able to move forward, how you still get your composure and still go out onto the stage. There are still very many lessons and that was another powerful thing, like you said, I love about this book. We're all at different places, every single person. And I want people to understand there is no just made it. You're not just at the top of the mountain and you just stay there. There's still things that are happening. Life is still lifing. And that's what I wanted to give with this story. Yeah, I've had all of these other books where I really talked about what it was like in the basement and first deals that I did and leaving a job to become an entrepreneur. Now, let me tell you, okay, there's still, even if you think I'm at the top of the mountain, which obviously there's way people ahead of me and way higher mountains to climb. I'm not on top of Mount Everest, even if you consider me on top of my little mountain hill. I'm still having it. I still have son that has meltdowns and things I have to cancel because there's the therapist got canceled or you change insurance and none of the therapists that you have been going to accept your insurance. There's things that you're still dealing with at every single point, and that's one of the major things I wanted people to get out of this book was that you're always making it. You never just made it until you're dead.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a decision.
Yes.
Making it is a decision. And it's what will you choose? Because again, life happens to all of us. There I always talk about the flip side of the coin. Like things are going great and there's going to be another
Right.
side of things that are
Right.
not going good at all. Which side do you
Yeah.
decide to focus on? Are you going to look at all the problems or are you going to be thankful for the things that are going right so that
Right.
you can attract more of that in your life? And this is where I talk about even, just shifting a little bit about what I told in my story. I believe that the way that we speak, the way that we think, we cause ourselves to
Yeah,
go into repeat certain patterns
right.
because that's where our mind is. So when you challenge yourself to grow, when you challenge yourself
Yeah,
to say, I'm changing this story, sometimes it can be an immediate, sometimes it will take
that's
time,
right.
but every day it's a decision.
I love
So
it.
you can choose to make it. And even if you've made it
To
before,
keep
it's
making
still a
it.
choice every
Yeah,
day to
to
keep
not
making
quit.
it. It's
Yeah.
still in the
So
present.
where's Dr. Sherry today? So like I said, we just came out with this. This book is available. Obviously, links are in the description box and on the screen. And this is an Amazon bestseller. So where is Dr. Sherry today? Because again, your chapter was so powerful and you had this dual role in this book. And I commend you. And I know that there were some struggles that we went through and you went through personally that are tremendous. So where's Dr. Sherry today in her life and what she's working on and doing?
So Dr. Sherry is in a very good place today. In the last year, and that's a whole nother book of what has happened in my life in the middle of us writing this book. My father passed away just a few months before we started the book process. My mother was in a very tragic situation that was all over the news in Miami, and it was a lot. It was not how I thought
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
2025 would go. But it was a decision every day to make
I
a
love it.
decision that I have to keep going, right? I have to keep making it. Either I can sit up here and allow the things that have happened to me to keep me in a place of
Yeah.
grieving, in a dark place and depression, or I can decide to say, you know what, there's so much of the world that's still waiting for me to show up. There's still so much of my story that needs to be told. There's still so much as a family, as a legacy, right? In the last, I would say 4 to 5 months, I've made a very conscious effort
Love
to
that.
be with my children. Like when you
Yeah.
start to see loss and grief, you start to really gravitate to
Absolutely.
the things that matter most. And a lot of times, what I had noticed myself as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, that I was always on the go. Like there was always something. Mommy has a meeting. Mom,
Right.
even though I tried to find
Right.
that balance, it was never fully there. But in the last 4 to 5 months, since life has life, I've made a conscious decision to be with my children, to invest in the things that they need, to make sure that I'm available. And I think that's probably been the
Yeah.
biggest shift that I've made. Like I said, no, we cut off at this time.
Love that.
This is my availability. And my son just turned 17. I have a 14-year-old that's turning
Oh,
15. I have a 12 that's turning
this is the
13.
age.
Like this is
Yeah.
the
When you
prime
want to
of their
clock
life. And I
in.
want to be a part
Yeah.
of every single thing that
Yep.
they're yeah, definitely locked
Love
in.
that.
So that's where we are right now. I am excited about the growth. I have been stretching myself to really, I'm working on a few different certifications. So there's things that
Yeah.
I'm always
I
grading
love it. I
myself,
love it because
Noel.
you are. You're just so self-aware, and you're right. I've seen your growth. I've watched so many things. We've obviously known each other now very, very many years. We've written countless books together, and we will write countless more together. Super excited for more of these Making It books. I mean, I literally was just I went to sleep when I finally got the book in my hand, and I was just overwhelmed with joy, like we did it. Because we've talked about it for what, 2 years? Before it actually, and so just holding it
Yes.
in my hand
Yeah,
and knowing that again, and I always say people, everything doesn't happen overnight, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. It doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because it didn't happen yet doesn't mean it's not
absolutely.
happening. So really want to thank you so much for helping us write this book, going into detail today, really sharing your story. Absolutely love it. I'm so happy people are going to get to actually read about you and not just, hey, here's a blurb on the publisher. Like, here's Dr. Sherry, who she is, and you're absolutely and included in this book. So I absolutely love it. I really want to thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Sherry. Cannot wait for us to write another one.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. It was so exciting to be a part of this project.